thing I'd like to bring up is that all of those numbers that I just said a second ago, to me, show that these people are bad people. They have been convicted guilty. Yeah, it's bad when people are convicted guilty for stuff they didn't know. So the final point I'd like to bring up is, in Mexico, which is pretty close to home for us, there is no death penalty. Also recently they have abolished life imprisonment, which is a slippery slope. That is where America could head. And that is what a lot of anti-death penalty advocates like to claim, is that they would like to stop at capital punishment, but really they are anti-punishment in general. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we turn this part of the debate over to audience member comments, I'd like to tell you about another part of the Oxford-style debate, which is you'll notice that on each of these doors there's a sign that says either yay or nay. And that yay or nay is in reference to the resolution.
Deciding what the jury gets to hear and what they do not get to hear. And frequently they will discount expert witness testimony because they feel that it's telling the jury what to think. But I thought the point of experts was to allow the jury to have enough information to make an intelligent decision. They're not being treated any better than the individuals who are being interrogated by the police, who use their fists, who use physical intimidation, and who use other forms of mental coercion to elicit confessions in the cases that they're pursuing. And that's been proven. Look at Chris Ochoa, ladies and gentlemen. Look at Chris Ochoa. Thank you.
This question's, I guess, for the young conservatives of Texas. Okay, it seems to me that there's a point in this debate where the Texas campaign to end the death penalty is offering at least some sort of reprieve for the people who are found guilty, that they are put in prison for life. And I'm just wondering exactly where we're going to have in the debate where the young conservatives of Texas will tell us what they're able to offer the innocent, families of the innocent people who are killed by the death penalty. I mean, are the people who kill innocent people also put to death, or is that something that is somewhat acceptable because it happens to be state officials? What happens when we have one group of people who are offering an alternative to be able to punish those who have committed murder, and that the other group does not have any reprieve when the innocent are convicted and placed on death row?
Oh, my comment, I oppose the death penalty, but I think that the opponents of the death penalty really hurt the case when they bring up race and these other contextual issues. I mean, it's like you could just make the death penalty less racist just by executing more white people. And no, seriously, I'm not joking. I mean, obviously we should always try to make the entire criminal justice system less racist. I mean, we should try to make society less racist. I mean, that should be a goal. I mean, we don't abolish the criminal justice system because it's racist. We don't say, well, we're not going to have any penalties whatsoever because, well, gee, it looks like minorities are convicted at a higher rate. And again, just let me repeat, I'm opposed to the death penalty, but I think when you bring up those arguments, you really actually hurt the case. I mean, honestly, would you be in favor of the death penalty if we took all the racism out of it? And I think the answer is probably no.
I'm not going to answer that, although I will just say that I don't think in this society that we can separate the question of, I mean, that was the point of Brian's statements, that you cannot separate race from the justice system in the society as we know it today. Unless you have a profound change in our society, then you can't separate it. Of course, we're against it in all cases. I wanted to talk about habeas corpus. Recently, Attorney General Gonzalez attacked habeas corpus, saying that the Constitution doesn't guarantee the right to habeas corpus, which I just think is outrageous. In Texas recently, the Court of Criminal Appeals just instituted new rules for lawyers who are filing in the appellate courts and filing writs of habeas corpus. Unfortunately, those rules came too late for my good friend Justin Fuller, who I witnessed being executed on August 24th of this year. A young man who was convicted under, similar to the law of parties, which in this state, you don't actually have to be the murderer. All you have to have done was be there when the crime was committed, and you can also be put to death. So that 3 of the defendants in his case were also on death row. And if you've ever been and witnessed an execution, you might change your mind about whether or not you think that that process is any way fit for a human
Ma'am,
society.
thank you. Sorry, we're out of time.
Taller. I would just like to say that I agree that the death penalty is cruel and unusual, but I think that cruel and unusual starts long before the execution process. It's cruel and unusual from the point of arrest and throughout the death penalty prison experience, especially in Texas. There's 23-hour isolation, no physical contact with families. In fact, the only physical contact you're guaranteed is an abusive prison guard and riot gear. And I think that overall, it's a dehumanizing climate in which you have to struggle daily just to survive it.
The young conservatives of Texas painted this rose-colored picture without facts, without statistics, that the money used in death penalty cases are being used correctly. And they did this without facts, without statistics, and on the contrary, there's still people that are being denied appeals on a daily basis because they cannot afford an attorney.
I'd just like to say that most of the arguments that I've heard from the gentleman over there are quite valid and are quite true, but it seems to me that the arguments are more against the system itself than the idea of the death penalty. While some may say that because the system is so unfair, we should not risk the lives of others who must suffer from that we must give them a chance to be innocent. That is true, but at the same time, we must remember that justice must be served. It is true that there are many problems within our judicial system, but we cannot simply just deny that and say that, oh, it is so unjust, we should just do this. We should just stop the death penalty altogether. The death penalty is an effective deterrent. It should be reformed, most definitely. I beg your pardon?
If we could just keep it to comments and you guys can talk after the debate.
The simple fact of the matter is, though, is that the death penalty, though faulty, does need to exist. That there are people who need to die, that there must be some sort of closure for these people. And furthermore, if you have people who are so excessively violent living among general prison population, they're going to kill other prison inmates, further causing more violence. But most of all, people seem to be complaining that it's cruel, but isn't putting someone behind bars for the rest of their lives cruel? Isn't it supposed to be harsh? Isn't it supposed to be mean? Simply.
Okay, I think the fact of the matter is we can't talk about the death penalty in a perfect world. We have to talk about the death penalty in this justice system. What I want to talk about actually is my friend Robert Will. Rob is a young man on Texas death row. He's an innocent man on Texas death row, convicted of killing a police officer in 2000, even though all the evidence, all the forensic evidence points to the son of a cop as the man that is actually the murderer. And I think the real tragedy in this whole thing is the way that the system was set up against Rob from the very beginning. And that we have two systems of justice in this country, one for people who can afford representation and those who can't. And the reality is that, you know, when GW did cocaine, it was a youthful indiscretion. When Rob was selling weed to buy his school clothes, he got thrown in juvenile detention. When he was sexually abused as a child, there was no money and no services to help him out, but once he gets put in the wrong place at the wrong time and has to take a fall, the state is going to spend millions of dollars to put his ass in jail, and that's messed up. And I would challenge anybody here to look me in the face and tell me that my beautiful fighting friend is an acceptable loss because of your messed up idea of justice.
But we'd like to encourage all of you to please find our panelists after the debate if you have anything else that you want to talk to them about. We really encourage that. I'm sorry that we just don't have time or we'd be here for a really long time. So you're going to be our last one.
All right, you talked about 12 people that were like murdered after they got out of prison. Can I ask you a quick question? If they were put in life in prison and just put in a cell, you can't tell me that our modern system cannot put someone in life in prison and keep them from murdering anyone. a major problem is that a lot of states don't have life in prison, and an often argument that I've seen is that